It's 10 a.m. Good morning. It's the time we have scheduled for our regular Board of Supervisors meeting. Today we have some auxiliary meetings that we're going to start with. So the first meeting today will be our Board of Equalization meeting, Tuesday, October 10th, 1023 at 10 a.m. in the Board of Supervisors hearing room, 1415 Melody Lane, Building G, Bisbee, Arizona, 85603. Pursuant to ARS 38-431.02H, the public will have physical access to the meeting place 15 minutes prior to the start of the meeting. Any item on this agenda is open for discussion and possible action. We will begin with the roll calls. District 1.
Crosby is here.
District 2.
Supervisor English is present.
And Supervisor Judd is here representing District 3. Members of the public may also attend this meeting via Microsoft Teams, computer or mobile app, or via phone by calling 602-609-7513 or 888-680-6714, conference ID 500-351-243#. If you have trouble accessing this meeting remotely, call 520-432-9200 for direction. The board may permit public comment during the discussion of any item on this agenda. To speak on an agenda item, complete and return the speaker request form to the clerk of the board prior to the start of the meeting. We will begin with the consent agenda. Can I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve consent agenda item number 1.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The chair votes aye and the motion carries unanimously. Our next item on the agenda and the only remaining item is item number 2, and it is about the Board of Equalization ratifying or denying their decision, and we have a speaker, Mr. Phil Leyendecker, our county assessor.
Good morning. Madam Chair, board members, you have before you one of the BOE hearing issues that has been taken off the consent agenda. The reason for that is that the decision of the hearing officer was in conflict with what our recommendation was to the board at that hearing time. This is, give you a brief rundown. This is involving about a 100-foot strip of railroad right-of-way that crosses the Ladd Ranch for about 6 miles. A couple years ago, the county had an issue where some of these right-of-ways from the railroad went into back taxes, and they were sold by, one particular one was sold by the treasurer's office in a tax lien sale. That created a significant problem because these properties are not subject for sale for back taxes because they're a right-of-way easement, and if they're extinguished, they should go back to the adjacent property owner where they came from. So as a result of that, my office looked into the fact that we needed to abandon these railroad right-of-ways. The Southern Pacific, the old Southern Pacific right-of-way coming from Benson to Naco to Douglas, the tracks and the rails were removed about 15 years ago. It has been discontinued. That line is not safe to operate. However, this office, I was not aware of the fact that the railroad company, Union Pacific in this case, still had control of it, because until the Surface Transportation Board actually officially abandons it, the railroad company has control of it. This created a problem for the property owner in this case, because the property owner in this case wished to do some flood control work involving this railroad right-of-way, and he was stopped because the railroad legally still controls it. He brought this issue to my attention when I realized we had extinguished that railroad right-of-way across his property and had added that back into his deeded property. He challenged that because he says, look, I don't control this. The railroad still owns technically and controls this. Until the Surface Transportation Board officially abandons this, and until the railroad company, in this case Union Pacific, actually abandons it, they still control it and own it. So my recommendation was we're going to have to go back and undo what we did. What we did was an attempt to extinguish these right-of-ways that weren't being used to prevent any further problems. no good deed ever goes unpunished. I found out that in fact it was discontinued but not legally abandoned. So I went back and I'm in the process of reassessing Union Pacific for that line. And at the same time, I have to remove it from, in this case, the lab property acreage. And that was my recommendation to the hearing officer. The hearing officer in his decision stated that you have a copy of that decision probably in front of you, but he stated that the taxpayer submitted testimony that the railroad still controlled the right-of-way, and he stated that the hearing officer understood that, and there was a full agreement on all parties on that, but then he chose to bring in another issue into the topic that was not added as testimony during the hearing, and he brought in the fact that the property could not be exempted. Well, no one suggested that this railroad right-of-way was going to be exempted. I did not bring Union Pacific into the discussion because Union Pacific was not subject to the hearing. The lab property was subject to the hearing. So, and I explained to the hearing officer at that point in time that in fact, if I implemented his decision of adding this back into the lab property, it would actually create a situation of a double assessment, which by statute is illegal. So my recommendation to the board is that you modify the hearing, the decision recommendation from the Board of Equalization here to exclude the railroad right-of-way out of the lab property, and that was actually my recommendation to the hearing officer when that was made.
Mr. Leindecker,
Yes, ma'am.
will we still say as noted in the attached exhibit? Is that included in that attached exhibit, or?
The original exhibit that was submitted to the Board of Equalization had those recommendations on it. So I am not sure what, I would say you can make a recommendation that the full cash value, the total full cash value be amended to reflect $838,146. And the limited value on all these properties does not change. The irony of all this is it's a minute change in full cash value and no change whatsoever in the limited property value. So there's no tax impact, liability change one way or the other for the property owner in this case.
But we really need to get it settled so that it's
Correct.
appropriately assessed.
Correct. And my office will be initiating a tax roll correction, a notice of proposed correction to Union Pacific to reestablish that assessment.
Okay.
Are they part of central assessment, all of Union Pacific?
No. This is another issue that the hearing officer appeared to confuse the fact that this is not centrally valued because it's not operating. That does not mean that they do not still own and control it. Yeah.
Madam Chair, I had a comment.
Okay.
I saw the recommendation per parcel illustration in the attachments earlier this week. Mr. Leindecker and I spoke briefly about these issues, and Mr. Karwachka told me that Mr. Ladd, my constituent, is good with your recommendation.
That is correct.
And then my question to the two of you, you have a motion prepared?
Well, I'll try.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I move that we modify the State Board of Equalization hearing officer's decision for notice of value appeal hearing on docket 804 various land properties held on September the 19th, 2023 and September 28th, 2023 to exclude the railroad right-of-way from the land property. And the total cash value would be $838,146 with no change in the limited value.
That's correct.
Madam
Second.
Chair, just one thing, it should be full cash value. not total cash value, just full cash value.
full cash
Full
value.
cash value, okay. And it-
Second, again,
Okay, second, and that is noted in the record. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion?
No, I think it's important that while it helps us to use the State Board of Equalization, it's very important that we keep with the office locally because they know exactly what's happening. So thanks, Bill.
Yes, thank you. Hearing no other comments, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
The chair votes aye and the motion carries unanimously. Our next
you.
meeting, oh, thank you, Mr. Landecker. Our next meeting is today at 10 a.m., which is more like 10:08 in the Board of Supervisors hearing room. It is the Flood Control District meeting.